Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 Beautification Awards. We're going to go ahead and get started with our event for the evening. Some housekeeping before we get into things. There is plenty of food, so please feel free to go have seconds, have thirds. We would love for you to enjoy what is over there on the table as well. If you're looking for the bathrooms, if you take a left out of the store and you follow this hallway down to the left, they're going to be on the right-hand side. There is signage, so you should be able to find them easily. So thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Kaylee Cisnowski, and I have the joy and the privilege of being the chair of the Farmington Hills Beautification Commission. I want to take some time to start by thanking all of you for joining us here tonight as we celebrate something that truly defines our city, our shared pride in how it looks, feels, and grows. The purpose of our commission is to advise the City Council on matters concerning the beautification and environmental interests of our city, and to promote, publicize, and acknowledge projects that make our community a more beautiful and sustainable place to live. Tonight's event is one of the ways that we fulfill that mission by recognizing the people and the places that go above and beyond to make Farmington Hills shine. To our honorees, on behalf of the entire Beautification Commission, please know how proud we are to celebrate your work tonight. We're grateful for the example you set in helping our city bloom in appearance and in spirit. Your work transforms ordinary spaces into welcoming gateways. You've taken great care to design with nature, to invite pollinators, to celebrate color and seasonality, and to create entrances and signage that make people pause and smile. You have helped shape how our city feels and show what it means to take pride in place. I also want to take a moment to thank my fellow commissioners, the city staff, and our partners here tonight who make this event possible. These awards are not just about landscaping, they're about connection, stewardship, and civic pride. Your efforts remind us that beauty and community go hand in hand, and that small acts of care can have a lasting impact. So as we move through tonight's program and honor our winners, let's remember that beauty doesn't just happen, it is cultivated. It's nurtured by people like you who care enough to plant, design, and dream for the good of all. With that, it is my honor to introduce someone who shares our commitment to that vision. Please join me in welcoming City Manager Gary Mekchin.
Thank you, Kaylee, and thank you, everybody, for coming to this wonderful event. I'm really happy that the weather cooperated with us. It was really kind of a not such a nice evening last night with the wind blowing sideways and everything kind of dark and grungy. It kind of, as beautiful as fall can be, it always reminds me that winter is on its way, which means we start getting our snowplows ready. But hopefully that's a ways off. So good evening. As Kaylee mentioned, my name is Gary Mekchin. I'm fortunate enough to be the city manager here in our wonderful city. And I am so happy to be here again this year to celebrate our beautiful city, and most importantly, the people and the organizations that help make it so. And this is certainly one of them. I'd like to say thank you to the Beautification Committee, without whom we wouldn't be here celebrating. It's because of your hard work in our community and making it more beautiful that the city's landscapes are a source of our local pride. And I want to personally thank the businesses, the organizations, and the neighborhoods that are being honored here tonight. Your steadfast commitment to making Farmington Hills beautiful and a welcoming place is truly inspiring. You know, as the city manager, there's only so much that we can do in our public rights of way, cutting the grass, trimming the trees back, things like that. But if it wasn't for this group and the activities that you do in front of your businesses, your neighborhoods, and elsewhere, it really wouldn't look so good. Because, I'm a DPW guy. I don't want to insult my DPW guys, but, we do production mowing. We don't do the landscaping and the highly manicured stuff, right, to make it really look nice and clean. So from the entire City of Farmington Hills team, I want to thank you for your unceasing commitment to enrich our community. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate it. So now with that, I would like to introduce our Mayor, Teresa Rich.
Thank you, good evening, everyone. And as long as we're introducing, let me introduce Councilmember Valerie Knoll, who is the liaison for the Beautification Commission, and Dr. Randy Bruce, who is also a council member here this evening. So as Gary said, I am Mayor Teresa Rich, and thank you so much for inviting me to share in this wonderful celebration today. Like Gary, I'd like to thank the members of the Beautification Commission, and could you stand and be recognized, please? Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank you for your continued guidance on beautification and sustainability throughout our incredible community. And for those of you who did not stand just now, good news. We have 2 openings for alternates to the Beautification Commission, and here is your moment of invitation. So for our folks involved in beautification in the city, not only do you inspire positive change throughout the city each and every day, but your creativity and artistic zeal are also extraordinary, all on their own. And of course, we have immense gratitude to the businesses, the organizations, and the residential locales that contribute to making our community so very vibrant. On behalf of the entire City Council, thank you for creating a lasting, positive impact on our whole community. I am optimistic that your continued contributions will ensure that Farmington Hills will remain an engaging and beautiful place to live, work, and visit. It's really an honor to serve a community that joyfully creates colorful, attractive, well-maintained landscapes that tell the story of our city's passion, creativity, and resilience. The continued investment into the vibrancy of our city and its bright tomorrow is just one of the wonderful reasons it makes it just so very deeply rewarding to be able to represent you all as our city's mayor. Thank you all, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Mayor Rich. It's now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the evening. John Delisle is a leader in ecosystem restoration, green infrastructure, and bioengineering, with extensive experience delivering habitat restoration and native landscape projects for the Michigan DNR, Farmington Hills, Royal Oak, Northville Township, and multiple communities across the Detroit metro area, including design, restoration, and habitat maintenance for Macomb, Wayne, and Oakland counties. As the principal of Natural Community Services, John leads a multidisciplinary team of natural resource and green infrastructure professionals. His work is rooted in sustainable design, low impact development, and adaptive management strategies. Under his guidance, the team is dedicated to designing, restoring, and stewarding ecologically resilient wetlands, woodlands, meadows, streams, and shorelines, using native species tailored to each community's unique landscape. John is recognized for his expertise in native vegetation design and natural areas management. He applies a strong land ethic and nature-based solutions to restore ecological function, visual appeal, and long-term stability to both urban and rural environments. Please join me in welcoming John.
The title of the first slide, Pretty Green Infrastructure. So I've given this talk to various groups, but something I care passionately about myself as an ecologist is that the average person, the average homeowner, understands that when they buy a plant, whether that plant's from, a nursery, a big box store, a native plant nursery, or they grow something themselves, that the plant is providing both visual functions and biological functions. And from a sustainability perspective, there's no reason why we can't do both. So really the educational sphere here is to understand how the nuts and bolts happen with the species of plant that is chosen on a landscape, project, be that for a beautification of a subdivision entrance or someone's yard or a public park or any type of project where plants are being put in the ground. If you haven't heard about, and I bet almost all of you have heard about native plants, that's what I'm talking about tonight. Now, once I'm talking about native plants, I think one of the biggest questions is, how do we do that right? We've probably seen lots of natural areas that, from a visual standpoint, are unkempt. As a biologist and an ecologist, all landscapes have certain values and functions. However, some, of the visual component of that, even if it is native, haven't always been either designed or maintained in order to have that visual component. And so one of the things that the field of landscape architecture has been looking at, and the field of restoration ecology, my field, has been looking at for the last 20 years, and 16 of which I've been with NCS, is how to do that. And so there's a few main ways that we can do that, but a big one is really understanding what is valuable to the homeowner or the landowner, and what are those visual functions, how do we bring them out, and still how do we support pollinators and do it in a way that's sustainable. So one of the things that I like to alliterate, and there's been multiple versions of this. I need to find another slide or make my own with a little better text box. But when you're selecting plants from other places, this is the biggest problem of why ecological services get reduced in someone's landscape. That can involve using Bradford pears. There are native alternatives to a lot of these things, and that's kind of what we encourage people to do. And now they're both in commercial horticulture as well as in the native plant nursery industry. There are options around for people to get native plants. When I first started in this restoration ecology field, it was harder. That was harder to do. You had to go to wild type. It was far away. But now there are nurseries, even in the city of Farmington Hills, where people are growing native plants, and you can get them. You can also go to a larger, local or, even a big box vendor and get plants that are at least native to the eastern U.S., often native to Michigan. The closer that provenance is, the more likely that you're actually supporting bees and pollinators that people, are trying to get services from to pollinate their tomatoes and their cucumbers and backyard crops, and to get their, flowers reproducing, which in the native plant landscaping, that's what we want to happen. So if anybody's read, on native plants and their benefits, one author that I very, very strongly recommend, he has multiple books on the topic. The original one was called Bring Nature Home, but Dr. Doug Tallamy from University of Delaware, incredible read. That kind of summarizes why we should be doing this. But what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is how we can do this and do it in a way that is actually appealing to the eye as well as, birds and bees. So, in order to understand these things, landscape architects and, landscape architecture research programs started looking at traditional landscape design values, what we'll call naturescaping landscape design values, and then began to synthesize these into sort of a happy medium. And so some of the factors that we talk about in, landscape values, whether that's, appraising the value of the plant or understanding its function as, an accent plant or a ground cover plant. It is the, how colorful is it? How much does it spread? What is its texture? And we also want to understand like how those environmentally fit into a particular landscape. Is it a swale? Is it, is it flat? Is it sandy? So what are the conditions that it grows under? And once you take into consideration all of those things in a particular place, screening for a set of plants that has aesthetically positive and environmentally positive or ecologically positive attributes, we can screen those things and say, this is a good plant, this is a good plant, this is a good plant. And there's a very large, availability list from a nursery X or Y or Z that actually are native plants. And just by doing that, just by making that single choice, it's really the most valuable choice that one can make from the ecological value, because these are plant species that evolve with all the insect and all the bird species, and then higher on up the food web. And those relationships just carry into the future and to where we are now. And that enables like the functions to work without a lot of, over-analysis. So the only thing that a person really needs to be concerned about is what values, like what colors, what textures does that plant have, and is it native? Like this, it's pretty cool that such a simple decision can make such a positive impact. It's one of the most rewarding things that I get to do on a day-to-day basis. So then we get into things such as cost and cost management. And how do we think about like both designing these things, planting them, and maintaining them in a way that's affordable and doable. And there's different ways that you can do it depending on what scale you're doing it at. But a lot of the some of taking the legwork out of native plantings and landscaping in general early, in the world of horticulture, used to think about, well, there's always a better mousetrap, right? So at one point, folks in the geosynthetic industry said, oh, it'd be a great idea to like create a polypropylene mat to keep weeds out, right? Well, people did that for a while and then realized when they put a bunch of egg rock on it and then the egg rock got silt in it or got leaves blown into it for 10 years, it got to be a mess. And then you start ripping it up, and it's not only is it pain and laborious to rip it up and they have to replace it and put something else back there, mulch-wise or whatnot. The other problem is we realized that microplastics and other fragmented synthetic compounds get into soils, and that's not good for water quality, that's not good for insects, that's not good for children, it's not good for our pets. It had all kinds of environmental problems with it. Well, one of the things that we found in the last few years is that native landscaping in a formal situation, we started experimenting with some of the natural fabrics that the vegetable industry was using, like paper weed mats. And those were okay, but they, and cornstarch weed mats, but they also have that same messy thing, and they don't last really quite long enough to let the natives get established like that. Oh, there's maintenance involved. But what we found in the last couple of years, and if anybody's interested, I'll send you information on the product. It's actually called aspen fiber weed mat. And so this stuff comes in about 3/4 inch thick layers of basically shredded aspen trees that is residue from paper industry. So it's a renewable resource, and these thicker biodegradable weed mats last about 3 years and allows the native plants, especially if you incorporate ground covers like wild strawberries or anemones or Carex pennsylvanica, Pennsylvania sedge, to creep into that matrix and start suppressing weeds by years 2 and 3. You can really get ahead of that and solve a lot of some of these maintenance costs that keep projects from reaching their full potential from a bloom standpoint or a lack of weed standpoint. And it took a while to get here. You know, there was a lot of research that went into some of these modern practices, and a lot of my information in this talk I learned from or gleaned from U of M Landscape Architecture and their researcher, Joan Nassauer. And she was very big, or is very big, on surveys and getting information understood that people actually like. You know, some of these things may be common sense, you know, style or theme, sustainability, a naturalistic pattern, and how do we replicate these things in a way that people can perceive the value visually, but it still has, but so can, in a certain way, so can wildlife. They actually can perceive it as a native landscape that has habitat features and structures that facilitate them having shelter and be able to get the food and water resources that they also need to live. And I think, you know, we're learning things gradually. And I think a big thing, and why this group is good, and why any gardening group is good, is getting younger people, getting more people interested in gardening, because that's you know, for the average person, it's the greatest impact that an individual can have on the sustenance of, you know, ecosystems. Because as the world becomes more urbanized, we become a larger footprint, and we become the ecosystem, and it starts to become a choice of whether they can choose to garden with nature or cover up nature. And that's like really, you know, essential in integrating like landscape and ecology. And I find it like, you know, really neat that, you know, it's kind of come full circle, you know, from how the land was managed and then how the land was covered, but now realizing like, we can really do something with all these open lawnscapes in places that maybe previously people were, you know, a little more timid about, you know, doing large-scale gardens, but some of these techniques, like the weed mat I just mentioned, using the right plant palettes, some of the very showy, but also, you know, rhizomatous, stoloniferous, ground covering native plants that fill that space and reduce weed pressure can enable people to make more of an impact on their own land, and, you know, in public projects, do more prairie plantings in parks and such. So I'll just talk through a couple, you know, of examples of native landscape projects that have an especially ecological focus. And with these, there's always like, you know, working with a client so that they understand what they have, what they probably could, you know, in ecological terms, undergo succession to become, you know, in a project standpoint. Sometimes that's phasing. Sometimes that's, you know, planting certain things early in a project and then adding on later. That can be phasing. Also going to be expanding to new areas. We've done projects like this, you know, obviously in a lot of lakes, natural shorelines, but we've also done, you know, we have one up at Colony Park in North Farmington Hills, around a large pond. Another at, you know, we have multiple retention basins where we use these native buffers. And a big thing with it is understanding, like, what is the maintenance regime? Because if you're gonna maintain an area like a garden, then you've got to put forth some effort over time to maintain it that way. If you've got a large enough space, something like this up by, I think this was, it's off of Joslin. I can't even remember the name of the lake, but that we actually burned this one. So there's different natural processes that can facilitate blooming, fire being one of them. Selective mowing can be one of them. Also selecting plants that bloom throughout the season, and that complementary type of phenology, where you might have some short plants that bloom early and then taller plants, and then even taller taller plants as you go along throughout the season, and that can be in layers and, you know, getting those plants to work together. So like one of the common matrices is using ground covers like Canada anemone or woodland phlox or pachyra or strawberry as an edging plant, and then using things like obedient plant and black-eyed Susan and Tradescania, spiderwort, and then backdrop plants that might be taller than that, asters and goldenrods, et cetera, as backdrop. And you can, within genera, you can pick species that are A, appropriate to the site, and B, have the aesthetic functions to make that happen. So like not every aster or goldenrod obviously has the same aesthetic qualities as, say, showy goldenrod, Solidago speciosa, or zigzag goldenrod. These are very showy goldenrods that not everybody, you know, understands or has seen commonly, but they do have like much higher visual appeal than you know what you might see in an old field like Canada goldenrod, for example. But using these functional patterns, regardless of the species choice, like, okay, this, you know, Aster olentangiensis has pretty big blue flowers, whereas Aster, Heath Aster, divaricatus, has, you know, smaller white flowers, not as showy. It's, the foliage doesn't have as pretty of a texture as olentangiensis either. So it's like understanding what those relationships are. They similar plant in as far as wildlife goes, but not similar plant as far as, you know, human visual context. So making those decisions and understanding how they can work together to help your landscape is a cool thing and enables a person to like execute a project with a little bit of help that comes out looking really nice and has, you know, great habitat functions. So a big thing is education and understanding how these pieces fit together. And like I said, you know, if you guys have questions on how to do that, I'm more than happy. There's some flyers and brochures out there that you can grab and get a hold of me. A big thing, you know, once you're introduced to the concept, there's a great deal of internet, you know, references around. Get online, it's, you know, to understand the best ones if you want to understand like the functions of native plants, especially in a landscape. Missouri Botanical Garden is a great resource. They have a glossary and they actually have a whole manual of native landscaping. That's a very, very good one. Wild Ones is another good one. And this guide, which is actually, I think it's Toledo Metro Parks and Nature Conservancy put this together. We live in the oak openings region, which is pretty neat. So down toward Toledo, you know, the sand, basically these old glacial beach ridges formed on ancestral Lake Erie. And on those ridges, you tend to get the drier oak and prairie community. And then in the swales, you get a wetter oak opening. Belle Isle Flatwoods would be an example. And there's a lot of pretty neat things that live in those. Some of them that were a little bit drier ended up getting farmed or became cities, but where there's remnants, a lot of the plants that we use in native landscaping are actually from this community in Southeast Michigan. So it's a really good resource to both learn about some cool natural area near you, as well as pretty plants that you can use in your front yard. And then like costs of how to do this stuff. If you're doing it yourself, it's really not that expensive, and because the planting strategy with a lot of native landscaping projects is to plant densely. Even if you're using weed mat, it's just really advantageous to get the surface covered, because in the long term, you're gonna have like way less maintenance. That might cost a little bit more per square foot at outset, but because of the long-term maintenance, you don't have to keep adding plants. You can just generate the transplants. when you want to move things around. You can just add a plant here or there, a flat of plants now and then, and make a change visually whenever you feel you want a different color, you want something that hosts a particular type of butterfly, etc. It's pretty inexpensive. So we like naturalistic designs, but that doesn't, not everybody wants that, and that's good. That's responding to what you know and understand, and there's ways to do that from an environmental perspective too. So like how we usually do this when we're designing something for a client is to contextualize both the local needs to that site and what soil types does it have, and then mesh those with what the client's looking for visually, and kind of balance those things into something that both meets their kind of design goals and their color schemes, and what works for them, and how do they use the space, and is there what is the what is it adjacent to recreationally, and so we go through a set of conversations with them about plant selection. One of those things, and Farmington Hills is very good on what they will allow you to do or what you need to submit for a landscape design. But that can be, depending on what you're doing, that can be in consideration. And then I encourage, and I need to do more of my own photo documentation, but we've done a lot of projects where before and afters can be pretty neat, where it was just a lawnscape, and then you put a little bit of native planting effort from plugs and a lot from seed, and you get something like this where it's just hums. It literally, where it was the only thing you heard was a lawnmower before. After when it's blooming like this, you just hear it's just a buzz with bees and birds, because they follow each other, and that food web and the system of those relationships is just amazing to see. So depending on the situation, obviously there can be submittal processes and planting iterations, but the point is that in each situation you can find a solution that works for that particular landowner. And we've done multiple different types of projects in both urban and ex-urban or rural environments that use different planting strategies. One thing that we like, is like using this is an example of this photo of using Canada anemone as an edge ground cover. It's a spring bloomer, but if you use it like both as the edge and then as a matrix, it can kind of weave through and form a living mulch, and then you don't have to mulch as much. You get different textures from its foliage. You have constant ground cover, and it maintains the moisture. You don't have to run sprinklers as much. And other things can grow up through it. So it might not be for a tiny little front yard. We might use something more like strawberry for ground cover edging, but it is a beautiful plant on a large scale. And actually that's, the top right was a Colony Park Farmington Hills photo. And then there's, it's getting toward how we started here, circling back, establishment and maintenance. So we go to these projects. Sometimes we're called in as, like, hey, I built this bioswale 10 years ago or whatever. Here's what it is now. So we often run into this on, where there's a lot of salt load, which is another design, consideration that most people, if they're gardening in front yard, have to think about, whether that's from, their own driveway or from, road splash. But there's ways to get around this too. Like we can go and use obedient plant, and black-eyed Susan and things that are actually tolerant of that high salt load to get around those things. It's just not everybody plans those the way that is most adaptive. We try to use plants that are, well adapted to all the inputs that, that they might encounter on a particular site. So a big thing for I think anyone, especially myself, on the take-home message, so to speak, is what have we learned from what we've gone through, and what we have, what's been successful, what hasn't, and what could we do better. So one of the big themes, I think, in working all these kind of native landscaping projects is the one thing that people usually don't think about is what is adjacent and how does that adjacency affect their native planting. It might be something like salt, but most commonly it's invasive species. So one of the handouts on there is woody invasive species control. There's also, I think a lot of people are now familiar with Phragmites. That's another halo phyte, like you saw some reed canary in this photo back here. Phragmites is another one in those high salt environments, tends to do very, very well. But another one is glossy buckthorn. And almost to a T, like if someone is going to have a problem in a native landscaping project, it's usually sometimes it's from Phragmites, but more often it's from buckthorn or honeysuckle or one of the woody invasive plants. And that's a big part of what we do, is to remove them from adjacent areas, whether that involves, replacing them with nice native grasses, switch grasses, whatever, or just, keeping them at bay in perpetuity. We do a lot of cut stump treatment, so understanding what invasive species are around and how you can control and prevent them from getting into your native landscaping is a big thing to keep in mind, because these plants tend to be much more aggressive than what we view as traditional, annual weeds. But on the positive side, one of the things that we see that we might have designed, for monarch butterflies and put in, a few different milkweed species. But what really makes me happy is when I hear back from clients that, oh, look at all these pictures of different butterflies that came to my yard. Some of which weren't, they weren't necessarily, plants weren't selected with them, but when you're choosing native plants with a client and you're going through a lot of, processes to select for, their texture and their often, when you choose enough of them, you also end up choosing some that are host plants. And, butterfly host plants, the adage is if you plant it, they will come. And I think that's why Doug Tallamy titled his book, Bring Nature Home, because you put the native plants there and you see a lot of, other cool living things. So with that, if anybody has any questions, go ahead.
How do native plantings hold up to deer that are in the area?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, that's a wildlife consideration that's not necessarily positive. And, if anybody's followed, different municipalities, I think Farmington Hills is one of them. But all the talk about deer call, no deer call, don't touch deer, I love deer. They are definitely browse, and they're a beautiful animal that has gotten out of control because there are no apex predators for them, or the coyote population hasn't evolved completely yet. Might take a couple hundred years. But they're, in the meantime, planting things that are resistant is very important, especially for woody plants. That tends to be what they go for first, and it is a somewhat broad palette. Some considerations can be, we do a lot of big habitat restoration projects, and it's deer, we guard trees. That's just, and some species of shrubs. Shrubs are generally, they might nibble on them, but they're not usually going to kill them, and there's enough of them that are adapted to resprout. But in a landscape, you know, there are effective repellents. Repellex is a good one. They even make a systemic Repellex tablet that we're using. It's just capsaicin that they've figured out how to get into the plant's vascular system. So it's basically pepper acid. You know, and at ones with egg solids, they're usually good repellent-wise. The other thing, if your goal is, you know, habitat restoration, but you want to be overwhelmed by deer, and you have a bigger property or it's a park setting, using native seed mixes, prairie plantings tend to be very not susceptible because of they're a matrix of species, and so that biodiversity. Deer might nibble on this, nibble on that over there, but they do have preferences, and they get all those smells in one area, and they go for where is the best. What do I like the best? And they nibble a little bit, and then they smell something else. There's not a defined pattern. Whereas if you just have a row of hostas, goodbye. So like biodiversity management can be effective on deer, depending on what the design context is. Good question. Go ahead.
Does grapevine ivy, is that invasive, or does it provide anything?
Grapevine ivy. Do you mean porcelainberry like Ampelopsis, or do you mean grapevine like wild grape?
Well, I don't know.
Okay, so grab a leaf, and if there's a very large swelling at the leaf stalk where the leaf stalk meets the stem, take a picture of it and send it to, you can send it to me or send it to Missin, and say, what is this? Or so plant apps are getting pretty good. If you, like Seek, if you take a picture on one of those, first step is to find out what it is. If it's porcelainberry, yeah, kill it. And if you're already, if this is a situation where even if it's a grapevine, is it actually strangling what it's growing on?
Well, it seems to be strangling. It goes up the trees in our wooded area in our subdivision, and then after a few years, the trees is going right up, and I think it's strangling and killing the trees.
Usually that's either porcelainberry or bittersweet. Is the vine like corkscrew pattern?
Yeah.
That's bittersweet,
Okay.
probably. Porcelainberry is more like 5,000 drapes, whereas if it's curling, like real pronounced curl to all the trunks of the vine.
Some of it is so heavy on the trunk of the tree, it's becoming like a tree on a tree. Like it's.
Porcelainberry can do that, but it's probably the color of the berries. Do you know the color of the berries?
I think they start off green.
Yep. They start off green. Do they turn? Do you know if they turn?
They turn red maybe, or
If they turn red to grape colored, that might be porcelainberry. If they turn yellow orange with a red, they do have a red arrow. Like so, like if it's bittersweet, when the seed husk opens up, it might have a red like arrow or ovary inside of it that you can see from the bottom. You find out what it is first. Those sounds not good though. It sounds like an invasive plant.
classes wherever you're at?
Do I give classes?
Yeah, where your organization.
My organization is a consulting firm. We don't, like we'll come out and help you.
Yeah, okay.
Don't teach classes though. No, but good references on that would be look up Oakland County SISMA. They, on invasive species, they will occasionally have, conferences, seminars, etc.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I have thistle that has popped up everywhere. And I know that if you dig it up, it'll just propagate more. Do you have a suggestion on if something, I can spray something on it?
Yeah, and do you know, is it Canada thistle or bull thistle or sow thistle? Do you know which thistle?
Purple flower, that's all I can.
Purple flower, and is it, does it have very long, like 1-inch spines or shorter spines? Maybe quarter to half it. Not sure. So there is a product called Milestone, or you can I don't know if a homeowner can get that, but you can get, if you go to Tractor Supply, Grazon Next. That will kill thistle very specifically and won't harm most other plants. It's a selective herbicide.
Popped up through my Pachysandra, all over the whole bed.
Pachysandra, yeah. So that I can't, you'd have to check the label on the herbicide to make sure it wouldn't affect the Pachysandra. But there are selective herbicides that you can treat thistle with, yes. Yep. Go ahead.
How often do you recommend putting down mulch? Does it need to be done every year?
I would say it only need, if you take this kind of approach, like if you are doing native landscaping, use weed mat, plant densely, you only have to mulch one time at the beginning of the project and let the plants be the mulch. However, if you're really trying to have like separated plant here, there, it's pretty much, if you're gonna keep weeds out 100%, then you'd wanna do it every year. Go ahead.
So how do you advise getting rid of Tree of Heaven and Oriental Bittersweet?
Okay, Oriental bittersweet. Yeah, so we were just talking about what may be bittersweet. Bittersweet is, I mean, when it's bad, it can be extremely dense to the point that you can't even walk through it. I don't know where it can vary. Deer pressure matters because they will eat bittersweet actually if you cut it repeatedly and you have a lot of so understanding the little dynamics between wildlife and plants, they will actually eat bittersweet.
I took a tree down in the corner of my yard.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, the corkscrewing and
Yeah.
the size of it, but the seed, the berries planted seeds
Oh, yeah.
everywhere around.
Yeah.
And they're growing in another location in the back of my house. I know what it looks like when it's short and it's got an orangish red fruit.
Yes.
How do you?
You can't, unfortunately, you could pull it till the cows come home. It's just too prolific. So there are herbicides that you can treat it with. Triclopyr or aminopyralid work well on it. You want to spray before the leaves turn yellow, really. It doesn't uptake it much at this time of year. However, if they're big, if you've got, even pinky finger-sized and bigger, you can do what's called a basal bark treatment with triclopyr in the winter for bad populations. You can actually kill them at this time of year, and the advantage of doing that is you won't impact other desirable landscaping wildflowers, etc.
What about the Tree of Heaven? Because I studied up a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Their roots seem to have a connection to her.
Yes, they have a complicated physiology. That's an unusual.
Up in the garden, when the main ones are in the woods and.
Yes, it's not only is it rhizomatous, but it has modes of chemical communication between the different parts of the clone. So black. Yes, there are a lot of invasive species are. They're an ecological dead space, and they're hard to kill. Most woody invasive species, cut stump treatment is great, where you cut it, throw in the chipper, treat the stump. That doesn't work with Tree of Heaven. It actually likes it and grows just as fast, if not faster. So what we usually recommend is we're doing this for Wayne County parks right now. Is you girdle them, treat the girdle, let it die, then cut it down. Then you might get a few sprouts, and you foliar retreat them. We've done this successfully on multiple scales, so you can treat it, but it's a little bit different than there is one other woody invasive that's like that. Black locust has a very similar response. A lot of chemical communications going on in the phloem there.
2 falls in a row, I went out and I cut a lot of the young saplings and put what you call it, tryptophora or whatever.
Yeah.
Put that
Yeah.
on where I cut and
Yes, and you can't with.
it's worse than it was before.
Yes, Sorry, my son is wanting to be part of the presentation. Oh.
The young
So-
ones, yes, employees.
You can't use triclopyr on Tree of Heaven. That's another thing. Yeah, so what I was telling her about aminopyrrolid, Grazon or Milestone is effective. Tordon is effective. And their habitat, imazapyr, is effective. So yeah, you have to use a specialty herbicide just to kill it. And black locust is not, it's actually, Tree of Heaven is even harder to kill than black locust. Anything else?
John, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just give me a second to get the PowerPoint loaded there. Sure. Thank you so much for joining us, John. He has left some literature on the tables, and so if you have additional questions for him, or if you'd like to reach out to him, you can go ahead and do so. We are going to get started with the awards portion of the evening, and so I will welcome Commissioner Kathy up to come and join us, and she will be walking through the presentation and the awards portion.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Brown, Secretary of the Farmington Hills Beautification Commission, and also a director of the Beautification Council of Southeastern Michigan, of which our commission has been a member of over 60 years. So wonderful for us. I want to welcome everyone to our annual awards ceremony where we honor the owners, landscapers, members, and volunteers who provide beautiful landscapes at their business, office, organization, shopping center, place of worship, and apartment, condominium, and subdivision entrances. I know there is a lot of work done in the design, planning, planting, and upkeep of these areas during the growing season, so please know that what you do to keep our city beautiful is so very much appreciated. Tonight we'll be seeing the photos that the commissioners took during the judging of each nominee. These will be shown by category. Please hold your applause until the end of each category. Also note in your program that those participants with an asterisk in front of their name will be receiving a Continued Excellence Award certificate for 10 years or more being recognized by the Beautification Commission. And that 10 years designation will also appear on their signs. After the photo of your space has been shown, you can come up to the table over there in the corner to pick up your certificate. There will be a card paper clip to the back of your certificate, and you'll need to turn that in at the table out there where you signed your name to receive your sign. Of course, if you don't want to miss all the beautiful pictures that we're going to show, you can always wait until the end of this presentation to pick up your certificate. As a little aside, impatiens, begonias, and petunias were sometimes hard to differentiate in the upcoming photos. So please forgive me if I say you've planted one when you've really planted another. Thanks. Our first category will be offices. Arboretum Business Park is located on 12 Mile Road and is the entry to several office buildings. It is a very well-maintained landscape which includes hardscape, a nice balance of petunia, begonia, and daisy, along with mature trees, add visual appeal to the entrance. Can you hear me okay? I'm not too loud, right? Okay, cool. Farmington Hills Corporate Center 1 is located on Haggerty Road, and this well-maintained entry provides a pop of color around the building's sign. The corner has a nice group of plantings, including begonia, daylily, and grasses, with a few boulders in the mix. Farmington Hills Corporate Center 2 is also located on on Haggerty Road, and the long approach to the office building is colored with daylily and vibrant petunia. Dusty Miller and petunia surround the sign and provides color throughout the summer season. This well-maintained area also has mature trees and tall grasses. Friedman Real Estate is located on 12 Mile, and the begonia, daisy, and daylily provide a nice approach to the office building and coordinates nicely with the additional landscaping. JRT Agency is located on Haggerty Road. This well-maintained entryway has a very nice wild area which draws interest with its milkweed and cattail. Red begonia surrounds the sign with one little white begonia peeping through. North Valley 1 is located on Northwestern Highway. The mature trees are commanding upon entry, lending a very calm feeling. Red and white begonia provide a nice pop of color around the sign. North Valley 2 is located on Northwestern Highway. The landscape is dotted with many mature trees and a mix of boulders, river rock, grass, and mulch. A slash of red and white begonia surrounds the sign. Spectrum Office Center is located on Northwestern Highway with 2 roads approaching the building entryway. A nice mix of orange, purple, and yellow daylily along with white hydrangea provide great color along one road, and stelladoro and daylily encircle the tree by the other road. Ward Eagle is located on 14 Mile and has nice hydrangea and daisy at the front of the building with daylily and hosta meandering along the drive and the well-kept lawn. Our next category is shopping center. Marketplace Shopping Center is located on Orchard Lake, south of 13 Mile. You've probably all been past that at one time or another. And you'll find a pleasing mix of hydrangea, roses, daylily, lupine, and fern gracing the long parking lot. Large rocks encircle many of the planted flowering mounds. Our next category is places of worship. Narden Park United Methodist Church is located on 11 Mile west of Middle Belt Road. The sign is surrounded by a plentiful bunch of river rock, and the chapel at the side entrance has well-kept hosta, geranium, with a backdrop of grasses and bushes, and finished off with mulch. This provides a nice symmetry as it frames the stairway. Orchard United Methodist Church is located on Farmington Road between 13 Mile and 14 Mile Road, where you'll find petunia, hosta, and roses at their entrance. The memorial garden is partially enclosed with arborvitae and other tall bushes and has a waterfall with varying stone slabs, river rock, and brick. St. Fabian Catholic Church and School are located on 12 Mile west of Orchard Lake Road, and as always has a nice display of flowers, including begonia, rudbeckia, daylily, coneflower, hosta, and several types of grasses. Now comes condominiums. Chestnut Ridge is located on Halstead, north of 12 Mile. The center boulevard has a very large stone sign with columns at the end topped with copper. Together with a variety of grasses, shrubs, barberry, and white and red begonias, it presents a welcoming entrance. The side streets are lined with mulch, trees, yucca, hostas, and red and white flowering plants. Copper Creek Community Association is on 12 Mile west of Halstead. The condominium entrance makes good use of a different variety of stones. This highlights the red and white begonia, pink roses, and beautiful hydrangea. Essex Club is located on Halsted, north of 12 Mile. Beautiful hydrangea, petunia, sedum, and shrubs front the condominium sign and the boulevard. The roadsides are graced with daylily, fern, large hosta, Joe pieweed, petunia, and a variety of large stones. Fairways of Farmington Hills is located on Halsted, north of 11 Mile. This landscape boulevard provides colorful red and white petunia, yellow daisy, daylily, a long line of shrubs, and a large center tree flanked by hydrangea. Green Point at Copper Creek is on 13 Mile Road. The large stone sign is fronted by red and white begonia, hosta, and coneflower. The smaller stone rectangular sign at the beginning of the boulevard shows pretty pink and white petunia and pink roses. Hampshire House is located on 14 Mile and Vassar. In front of the large sign, flanked by yellow brick columns and backed by trim shrubs, you'll find several bushes, yellow, white, and pink gladiola, red and pink begonia, and white and gray dusty miller. Meadow Ridge is located on Middle Belt, north of 11 Mile. The large sign at the entrance to the boulevard has a border of stones and small bushes with tall grasses on either side. A variety of shrub and Joe pieweed are found further on. Pine Knolls is located at Middle Belt, north of 12 Mile Road. A number of different shrubs and daylily and a profusion of purple petunia, daisy, rudbeckia, and coleus provide a nice combination to the entryway. Ramblewood is located on 13 Mile and Tanglewood. This well-tended assembly of shrub and burning bush shows long swaths of pink begonia. Sierra Point is located on Halsted and Sierra Point Circle. The boulevard has an explosion of plantings, including shrub, daylily, stelladoro, petunia, daisy, begonia, and hosta, with additional begonia, hosta, daylily, roses, and hydrangea along the sides of the entrance. The Meadows is located on 13 Mile and Vista. Shrub and roses grace the entrance sign, and at the end of the plot we find daylily, sedum, and red and white begonia. Next we'll see businesses. America House is located on Middle Belt, north of 10 Mile. A well-kept entrance where the sign is surrounded with rock and stones and planted with salvia and dusty miller. The nicely mulched strip in front of the building is planted with low trees, trim shrubs, several different hydrangea, red and white petunia, and pretty hanging baskets of ferns. Amerisher is located on Halsted Road. A well-maintained corporate park boulevard and building frontage shows a variety of shrubs and trees, daylily, stelladoro, and dustings of pretty pink petunias. Farmer John's Greenhouse is located on Haggerty Road south of 12 Mile, and we probably all visited that one. Thoughtfully designed in different areas, you'll find shrub, astilbe, salvia, rudbeckia, petunia, daisy, hydrangea, roses, and grasses. Fox BMW of Farmington Hills is located on Grand River. The sign is surrounded with a large swath of pretty bright pink petunias, stelladoro, and tall grasses. The long stretch of lawn is lined with well-tended shrubs. Fox Buick GMC of Farmington Hills is also located on Grand River. The tall sign is surrounded by grasses, barberry, rudbeckia, impatiens, and agarantum. Around the parking lot, you'll find stones holding up beds of impatiens, hosta, hydrangea, daisy, and grasses. McCabe Funeral Home is located on 12 Mile, west of Orchard Lake Road, and has nicely maintained lawn with mulched areas that contain hydrangea, hosta, and petunia. A long driveway lined with shrubs, roses, begonia, and Stella d'Oro is found at the side of the building. Suburban Imports of Farmington Hills is located on Grand River. There are several areas of well-trimmed and shaggy shrubs flanked with large boulders and red, pink, and white begonia, pink hydrangea, hosta, and tall grasses. Mulch and river rock complete the look. And our last category is subdivisions, and there's a lot of those. Barrington Green is located on 12 Mile and Gettysburg. The pretty entrance has a nice variety of plantings, including hosta, sedum, barberry, daylily, spiderwort, dianthus, bloody cranesbill, and rudbeckia. Dunbar Oaks is located on Drake, south of 13 Mile Road. The well-maintained entrance and median are planted with Stella d'Oro, agarantum, hydrangea, daisies, roses, begonia, sage, daylily, and grasses. Farmington Brook is located on Haggerty, south of 13 Mile. The road construction made it a little difficult to photograph the entrance, but it still looked really nice with begonia, daylily, hydrangea, hosta, rudbeckia, bloody cranesbill, roses, Joe pieweed, and grasses. Farmington Ridge Glens Groves is located on Halsted and Worcester. The site is graced with different flowers, including sedum, Stella d'Oro, roses, hosta, salvia, tickseed, and switchgrass. Farmington Square is located on 9 Mile and Halsted and has multiple entryways with the same design of large flat boulders, shrubs, hydrangea, rudbeckia, hosta, and begonia, which all provide a pretty setting. Forest at Hunters Point, is located at Drake and Bradford. The entrance and median contain shrubs, agarantum, Stella d'Oro, hydrangea, daisy, roses, begonia, mealy cup sage, also known as salvia, daylily, and grasses. Halsted Hills is located on Halsted and St. Andrew. The large rock sign lays behind and beside a nice variety of hydrangea, juniper, stonecrop, sedum, begonia, Joe pieweed, roses, hosta, and grasses. Halsted Hollow is located on Halsted north of 8 Mile. The engraved entrance sign has a nice backdrop of trees with shrubs running the length of the white fences. The sign is fronted by shrubs, euonymus, and fuchsia petunias with a sprinkling of Stella d'Oro. Holly Hills Farms on Middle Belt south of 13 Mile. The two entrances are colored with impatiens, hosta, rudbeckia, sedum, holly, daylily, and grasses with a rock border. Hunters Point is located on Middle Belt and Wellington and shows a very colorful entrance with a profusion of red, pink, and white impatiens, beautiful hydrangea, geranium, rudbeckia, sedum, hosta, shrubs, and grasses. The Kimberly signs are located on 11 Mile Road and Middle Belt Road. The three entrances present nice rock signs with rock borders, shrubs, and colorful red begonias, yellow and red marigolds, and rudbeckia. Meadowbrook Hills Woods Forest are located on 8 Mile Road between Haggerty and Halsted. Arched landscaping follows the slight curve of the sign with rudbeckia and red, white, and pink begonias in front and shrubs and grasses on the side. Rolling Oaks West is located on Drake, north of 13 Mile. Nice mulch and shrubs around the sign and flat stepping stones provide a path flanked with purple, white, and red petunias. Strathmore is located on 13 Mile in Haggerty with a subdivision sign on the top of a slight hill. It's backed by pines with grasses at the top and shrub and begonias flowing down the hill. The two islands have shrubs flowering hosta and begonia. Three Oaks is located on Farmington Road north of 13 Mile. A very symmetrical design shows boxwood, hosta, sedum, fuchsia and red petunia, and Alexander's Great Brunera. Whispering Wood Estates is located on Halstead north of 12 Mile. The beautiful long stone sign is backed by large pine trees, and in front are seen trimmed shrubs, barberry, grasses, and sedum. Woodland Trails is located on 13 Mile between Drake and Halstead. The superb diversity of conifer and deciduous trees adds interest and appeal. A canopy of mature trees shades a wonderful mix of shrubs, coral bell, impatient, hydrangea, and grasses. And that's the end of the presentation, so I will hand it back to Kaylee to present the Commissioner's Award. Thank you.
Each year, the Beautification Commission selects one project that stands out for its care and creativity. This year, the Commission is thrilled to honor Chestnut Ridge as this year's Commissioner's Award winner. Sure, yeah, I have a plaque if you would like to come up and receive your plaque.
Lots of hard work behind that.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate that.
Beautiful job. Congratulations to Chestnut Ridge and to all of our award winners tonight. As we close, remember to join us for our litter walk on April 25th and the spring plant swap event at Heritage Park on May 9th. We also welcome community input and participation year-round, so if you'd like to get involved or have ideas for beautification or environmental projects, please reach out to us. As Mayor Rich pointed out earlier in the evening, we do have 2 alternate positions open. We would love to have you join us. Thank you all for being here tonight and for everything you do to keep our city vibrant and welcoming. Have a great evening. Thank you for joining us.